On this episode of the podcast, you're going to learn the biggest mistake homebuyers make. Welcome to the Steven Rotsart podcast. I'm your host, Steven Rotsart, and I'm here to provide you value. From my years of real estate experience, I'm here to provide you tips and tricks in the real estate industry and to have guests on that have impacted my life and that I think that you might be able to benefit from too. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the podcast. Today I want to take some time and really go deep into one of the biggest mistakes that we see homebuyers make on a regular basis that we meet. And really it starts from probably just lack of knowledge more than anything, but I think it's specifically because of the internet. It has changed the way that a homebuyer starts their search process and begins looking for homes. So based on the most recent information, NAR just put out a publication in which it said that 47% of them went to the internet first before they ever started doing anything else, and they started searching for homes immediately. Now that's not really unusual, even given our current statistics of our past clients. They did go to the internet first, but here is where it gets kind of tricky. Home buyers really can struggle and be led down a path that can create a lot of difficulty, and they end up getting taken advantage of. Here's what I mean. I provided in other videos for you some 3-step processes of really the steps that a first-time home buyer should take when they go to purchase their first home. And those 3 steps are super simple. But the biggest thing that we see is that a home buyer really thinks that because they're using the internet and because they've clicked on something, that agent that maybe props up on a certain property is the agent that is associated with that property. And that's not necessarily true. And the mistake that happens is that they don't cultivate a strategy, a home buying process strategy, to really make sure that all the goals are met for them as a home buyer. And that's even more evident with some of the data that we're seeing now. So most recently, an article was put out by BAM, Broke Agent Media. I'll put a link to the article right down below. And you can see that there's been a 9% increase in lawsuits filed against real estate agents. And why would that be? Well, basically because it comes back to the beginning of the home buying process. And I can kind of speak on this because I've even had it happen to me personally, because you can have clients that I haven't personally conveyed the home buying process correctly. Even during COVID, it was very difficult to cultivate that type of process unless we were meeting for a Zoom call or something of that nature, because more often than not, most agents that are doing deals and negotiating for their clients meet with a home buyer in advance prior to opening up a door or going to a property, or it's done at that first visit to come up with what the goals are for the particular home purchase. And what that happens and what it creates really is that it creates a clear path of understanding of what the home buying goal is. Is it a first-time home buy? Is it an investment property? Is it a move-up home? All those different processes have different strategies that are associated with them. I've been a licensed realtor in the state of California for over 25 years now, and I've seen this kind of develop and even go in waves depending on what the market is doing. So when the market is really good, home buyers kind of negate a strategist or having a specialist on their side. And I think that is where the key is, especially as we're seeing the market start to shift. We're starting to see things change. A home buyer really needs to have a specialist on their side. Imagine if those homeowners that purchased a home in the past 2 years had a specialist on their side that could advise them of some very specific things. And what I mean by that is because those lawsuits are associated with waiver of contingencies, waiver of inspections, waivers of appraisals, of people that were overpaying for property or accepting as is condition that should have been some type of compensation for repair or repair work being done. And if you have a specialist on your side, a real estate agent that is very good at their job, their first thing is to be a fantastic negotiator. They have to understand how to work with a colleague and really make a buyer and seller come together. And I think the art of this has been lost, really, because when I first started in the industry, I used to have to present my client's offer in person. I had to sit down with a seller and a seller's agent. I had to present the offer in person and convey the information about my client. And that's a lost art with technology and where things have come. Some agents don't even talk to each other. More often than not, most agents won't even respond to a phone call. You might get a text, but an email is all you get. And these emails are as you're sending offers on behalf of your clients. And good agents understand that, and they understand how the business has changed.
changed, but they can also just become annoying so that at least a listing agent has to respond. And sometimes that's what you need to have as a buyer, that you want an agent that's going to become so annoying to make sure that they're fighting for your best wishes. So specifically, this kind of comes up right now in this time because we're seeing a lack of inventory, and that is forcing buyers to really make decisions that are quite unique. They're making decisions without really a buying strategy of what they're looking for. For example, if you have a particular neighborhood or community, you have a particular price point. If you haven't met with a real estate specialist that can work on your behalf, we are seeing almost 7% of the inventory that goes on in the market never actually hits the internet. Well, that's quite a few homes, especially when you consider that some of those homes not only never hit, but if they're never hitting the MLS for public to see, that's still quite a few homes changing hands that no one gets the opportunity to even look at. So if you have a specialist that's working on your behalf, they understand where those homes exist and where those opportunities might be. So if you have some very specific needs, whether it might be a single story, whether it might be a pool, whether it might be a certain price point, a certain school district, those are all things that are very, very specific that a real estate specialist in the industry can really fine tune for you and come up with a strategy to make sure that you can secure what you're looking for. What's been interesting too is if you look at the stats, most people weren't dissatisfied with their agent until after it closed escrow, which I find kind of interesting. So let's say, for example, you're somebody that actually found someone on the internet and you clicked something and met a random agent at a property. The agent knows nothing about you. They have no relationship with you. They don't know your wants and needs. They just know that you want to see the property. Now, in some ways, that can be a positive thing if you're just trying to get in the door or weren't available to go to the open house. But the reality is that person can't solve or guide you in any circumstance to be able to really get you what you need. Whereas if you sat down and had a buyer strategist session with a real estate specialist, you can actually go through very, very specific things to make sure that all your needs are being met. And let me give you another example on this. Normally, we would sit down with a buyer that is interested in purchasing a home. Let's say, for example, it was a husband and wife, and we always ask them to list their top 10s, your top 10 wants and needs that you want out of a property. And sometimes we even have to separate them into separate rooms so that we can actually not have them cheat and look at each other's answers in advance. And then we come back together and we have a discussion with what are the top 10 things, and you'll be amazed at how different those things are. And so the goal of a real estate specialist is to put those two lists together and really come up with a plan to be able to find the exact product that you're looking for. The other thing, and I think it's really interesting, is that it's not all about the property, and sometimes it's not about the price. If you're a most recent seller, okay, and let's say you're renting right now, your goal was probably to buy in a down market so you could take advantage of something when you gained equity when you sold. The big deal is that you want to make sure that you're using a specialist that understands where those buys are currently at and what those good buys are, those deals. That is really difficult to find. And the reason is because you have to have a specialist, a real estate agent, look you in the eye and be able to tell you, no, this is not a good deal. And we're not seeing that a whole lot. In our industry, especially when the times are good, people become transactional. Real estate agents become fearful of their next paycheck and things of that nature. It's just kind of this revolving system where you really don't have a relationship with the buyer that you're representing. And so you want to make sure that you take the time as a buyer to create a relationship with a real estate specialist. And this relationship is super key because you are now going to create a team that's going to work together to be able to come to a common goal of finding you the perfect property. Now, what does that look like? Well, hear me out. Maybe you sit down and have a strategy session with a real estate specialist to come up with a home buying process and a strategy for you to find what you're looking for, we should say. But then from there, there's more to it. Like I said, 7% of the properties never actually, in our area, never actually hit the internet. So no one ever saw them, but a real estate specialist is scanning public records constantly for certain types of things that could be deficiencies. They could be someone that might be likely to move. In a particular community of where I work, over 30% of the properties never go on the market. They're private sales. They're handed from one to another. And if you're not in the know of those properties, you might not ever be able to get in that community. You know, a turnover ratio that is really good is about a 6% turnover ratio of a particular community. And there are some neighborhoods neighborhoods, especially in my area, they're under 2%. That means no one's moving. People move into a particular neighborhood, they love it so much they never leave. That can happen. So you have to find someone that knows the ins and outs of every property that might be able to come on the market. But you sit down and you have this strategy session. Then from there, you create this teamwork so that you're constantly in the know of what's going on. What I mean by that is that your real estate agent or your specialist that you're interested in working with is going to send you properties that they really think might fit your needs based on kind of questions that you may have answered. And maybe you even walk some of those properties and take a look at them. But then from there, it kind of keeps going, because depending on how specific your wants and needs are, it might take a while for you to find the right property. So if you see a sign, and sometimes this happens where a sign goes up in a yard and it's not on the internet yet, but you can still call on the sign. Let your agent know. Work as a team together and let that agent, who might already have a professional relationship with that other listing agent on that particular property, find the ins and outs and get you the information that you need so that you can figure out the best deal that might work for you on that particular property. And that's really the key to making sure that all of your wants and needs are satisfied, especially in this marketplace that we're dealing with right now. Low inventory, every single little thing can matter, especially if you have very specific wants and needs. You need to create a team that is working cohesively to make sure that you can get the best deal. So that being said, if you have any questions with regards to anything I just said about coming up with a buying strategy or the home buying process in general, I have links down below. You're welcome to take a look at those if you're watching on YouTube. If not, if you're actually just listening to this on our podcast, feel free to send me an email or hit me up in a link. You can find us on social at Steven Rotsart. You can find us there, DM me, and I'm happy to set up a strategy session with you as well. And we can go through the specifics of really what you're looking for in this marketplace, because that's truly the key. And 9 times out of 10, what's really interesting is that most home buyers don't use their agent the second time around. So that person that represented you when you bought your property, they end up using a different agent. And this is probably where things are going to get a little murky, and I'm probably going to piss people off. The reality is this: you probably have a relative or maybe even a friend that just got licensed in real estate. And as the business has changed, when the market is good, anyone can sell real estate. But as things get more difficult, you really have to hire a specialist on your behalf so that you don't have issues, and that the marketing and the strategy of you either selling or buying a home really doesn't get interfered with, and you don't end up as one of those statistics that's involved in a lawsuit later. The biggest thing you need to understand is that everyone can be helped if they have the right plan. And I believe in that thoroughly. So if you are in need of any help at all, or you want to have a home buyer strategy session, I'm here for you. I'm happy to work on those things and see if we can sit down and work something out for you. So go ahead, click the link down below. I'm happy to help you set up a session and we can get that done. If you have any other questions, DM me at Steven Rotsart, and I'm happy to help you as well. Thanks for listening.